he has commentary. It's very hard to find commentary on the book of Esther. I don't find it very in English. So I may refer to some of the stuff that he talks about. But before we begin, let's just say a bracha to be together. Baruch atah Adonai
Adonai,
Eloheinu
Eloheinu
melech
melech
haolam
haolam,
asher kitshanu
kitshanu
b'mitzvah
b'mitzvah,
mitzivanu
anu
asok
asok
b'divrei Torah.
v'torah.
Okay, update. It is not a tradition to eat treif on Purim. That may be some certain Reform rabbis' custom, but there's no way any religious Jew is going to eat treif. I definitely went and I looked at Helen and I remembered that I had asked
Uh-oh.
that. And I said, and they said, well, rabbis may do it, but no, that's not a tradition, and nobody who's really kosher would ever do that. So be assured, be reassured. So that's number one. Number two, I was reading Alter's introduction to Esther, and I knew this, but I didn't mention it. This is the only book in the whole Tanakh where God is not mentioned at all. God is not mentioned, and it's a very secular story. And the rabbis kind of, explain it by saying, "Well, God is behind the scenes. God's presence is behind the scenes, so you don't need to mention it." But also, he really pinpointed the time when this story would have been written, which was around 420 BCE, around then, when there were Jews in Persia. But it was probably after the return from exile. So I just to remind you historically, in 586 BCE, the temple was destroyed and a huge part of the Jewish population was taken into captivity and brought to Babylonia, which is modern day Iraq. Okay. And then Iraq or Babylonia was conquered by the Persians. And so it became a Persian, then Judea was now Persian territory, no longer Babylonian. And Cyrus the Great said the Jews can return to their homeland and rebuild their temple. And he was a very tolerant king, but also this way they would pay taxes. He could get, an economic benefit if they went back and they built up their country and they ran it and pay taxes. So my point is that Alter says, even though this story took place when Jews had returned to Judea, Persian Jews were still in Persia. There's no mention of Israel or Judea in the story. There's no mention of it at all, even though the Jews were back there, because he says diaspora living was accepted as, a common choice. So it's like American Jewish history. You don't mention Israel until the state of Israel, then whatever. But there's no mention of Israel or Judea or the exile or any of that. Everything takes place in Persia. So I thought that was interesting. And I hope that Merle and Pamela will show themselves, because I miss your faces. And Susan, I hope you'll show yourselves. And so that's number one. And also, what was the other thing? Oh, yeah. Robert Alter, Susan Ehrlich, I'm talking about Robert Alter, his amazing translation and commentary. He, of course, says that this was a fantasy and a farce and a satire and a wonderful story that the Jews were writing in this time during that celebrational time. So he definitely doesn't think it really happened, according to Robert Alter. And so that it was, and delightful. And he says there's all of these subtle satire, making fun, gentle poking of fun and jokes that you can see in the story if you're paying attention to the text, which it's like really fun to read and very funny, and everybody enjoyed it. And he also talks about Esther being Ishtar and Marduk being Mordecai, but he suggests, which I never heard before, but it's interesting, that Jews in that time, just like during the time of Alexander the Great, there were Jews who named their children Alexander and Alexandra and other Greek names. That Mordecai was a Jewish version of Marduk, wasn't a satire, that there were Jews who took Mordecai because Marduk was a well-known god, and that was like the Jewish version. And Esther was a Jewish version of Ishtar, but it wasn't, as I have read, a satire on them, but actually people took those names. Like, I guess there are Jews, we have, like, today you take, I was going to say, I know actually one Jewish guy named Chris or Christopher,
My
Christine.
son-in-law is Chris.
You're who?
My son-in-law,
and he's
Christopher.
Jewish? And he's
Yes.
Jewish. Okay, so it wasn't like a satire of Christ. It was a common name that even Jews took because it was just part of the culture. So I thought that was interesting as well. So I wanted to share that and remind you that where we left off, as I show the text, was right after King Ahasuerus was convinced by his advisors to get rid of Vashti because, why? Do you remember? Susan?
Yes, because she refused to come before his partying 600 guests wearing a crown, and some think just a crown. But she refused. I'm not going to stand up here with all these gawking men.
Right. So, but then the logic for getting rid of her and replacing her was more than that. What was the logic for it?
Well, some of it, if you don't get rid of her, it's going to show men in the kingdom that that the husbands don't have control of their wives, and the wives will just do what they want.
Yes. Bonnie, were you going to say something?
No.
No. Okay. So they're saying, if the queen doesn't have to listen to her husband, what will our wives, do? They would feel they don't have to. So that's exactly where we leave off. And I'm going to share what I have to put share.
So can you tell me which Robert Alter that he's doing the story in? Is it his trilogy?
It's in the writings, the book of writings.
Yeah, I have that. Okay, I'll take a look.
Yeah, it's in the writings because it's in the Ketuvim. So,
yeah.
Okay, so the book of Esther. Okay. So there was a little more before this. Hold on. We'll go up a little bit. How do I?
But I want to say I don't know that you have to look at it as either or. You can say these are two different interpretations. That one, it's a satire, and the other one, yes, it's based in the truth. It is not satirical. Like,
yeah, you can, but we can look at the different. That's fine. Well, the Orthodox for sure look at it that way. Okay, so all right, Susan, why don't you read from 18 in the big print? That's where we left off.
This very day, the noble women of Persia and Media, who have heard of the queen's deed, will repeat it to all the king's nobles, and there will be much disgrace and anger. If it please the king, let a royal edict be issued by him, and let it be written into the laws of Persia and Media, and let it not be revoked. The Queen Vashti may never again appear before King Ahasuerus, and let the king confer her royal title upon another woman who is better than she.
Better meaning what?
More cooperative and listens to what you say.
Yes.
It doesn't have a will.
More docile, okay. Keep going.
And the king's decree which he shall proclaim will be heard throughout his kingdom, for it is indeed great, and all the women will respect their husbands, nobleman and commoner alike.
Okay, just finish these two.
Yes, well, this idea pleased the king and the ministers, and the king did as Memucan had advised. He sent letters to all the king's provinces, to each province in its script, and to each nation in its language, saying that every man shall be master in his home, and that he speak the language of his nation.
Hold on, is there one more? Okay, well, so let me ask you this. I want to stop share. why does it say, and he shall speak the language of his nation? He says he sends out the edict in every language to make sure. And then he says, every man shall speak the language of his nation.
So that's the vernacular. When they conquered other nations, there were people speaking different languages, and he wanted to be clearly understood what he was saying, and that it relates in their own language.
Okay, so Robert Alter actually says that what he's saying is, I love this translation. He sent out ministers to all the provinces of the king, to every single province in its own writing, and to every single people in its own language, that every man should rule in his home and speak his people's language. So why do you think he needs to speak his people's language when he's ruling in his own home?
So his wife will understand what
Exactly. Make it clear that he sends out the law, in all the languages. So if you're living in India and you're speaking Tamil or whatever language, you will read it to your wife and speak it in her language so she understands she must obey her husband. So imagine, it's kind of funny that they so is there a satire in there? Is there kind of a humorous suggestion in this little passage here in any way, do you think? Anything kind of funny? Penina?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's because all the nations that were under his rule had different their own language. I don't think that he was worried about the husbands telling it to their wives in their own language, as that the whole country that were under his rule will get it, will understand that he's the one who gave the rule. It was if you're accepting that, it's not just to accept that the rule that the wife should listen to the husband. It's the idea that the other nations will obey his rule. Everybody.
Well, everybody will obey it, but he's saying every man should rule in his home and speak his people's
Yes,
language.
but the authority coming from him. So it's a.
Oh, you think it's more about the king's authority?
Exactly, and it's not only that. There was, if there was assimilation among the Jews, other nations probably were either required or commanded to obey his rules anyhow. You understand what I'm saying? It's to extend his authority, period, and all over those countries that he ruled. And I think the assimilation is the point that really the story here is coming to tell us as Jews, that assimilation, adopting the name of the gods and behaving the same way as the others, didn't protect us.
Interesting.
That's the whole thing. They didn't protect us because with Haman wanted to show the king that he could make money off of getting rid of the Jews.
Yeah.
The king accepted that and was willing to do it without batting an eye.
You're right.
Assimilation did not help us.
Okay.
Thank you. Protect us.
Thank you.
That's what I was trying to tell you.
That is very interesting. I like that. Okay, Helen. You're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I just wanted to be funny here and quote Mel Brooks, but my timing is now off. I was going to say, it's good to be the king.
Yes.
It is good to be the king. But I think there's some, to me, humor in that we have to pass a law. Oh my God, our wives won't listen to us. We have to pass a law, and we have to tell every husband in the entire province that you need to tell your wife that she needs to listen to listen to him. So there's like, as you know, I've said this before, if you pass a law, it's because people aren't doing it. So the implication is they weren't listening, or they would follow Vashti, or that this was their concern. Their big concern was, oh my God, our wives won't listen to us. Let's pass a law across the entire empire telling husbands that, your wives need to listen to you, and it's a law. Yes, Pamela.
Well, I just have a couple of little random thoughts. One is that I think it's interesting. that to me, there's an underlying message that says you have to tell your wives that the king said so, as
Right.
opposed to just you saying this is how it goes, right? Because obviously, if a man isn't already respected and this isn't already the dynamic, like you were just saying, then it's like, well, the king says so. It's like either, and when you think of like divine right of kings back in the day, right? So it's almost like saying God-ish said so,
Right.
right? So this is how it's supposed to go. It's not just me saying it. It's, so I think it's interesting that the man in the home was so weak in terms of authority that they had to invoke some higher power in order to enforce this rule.
Or yeah.
And
Yeah.
I also think it's notable that they had to speak it to them. They didn't say, hey, hand them this edict, because, most women weren't literate. So it's a commentary on that as well, that they had to speak it to them.
Right. Good. Okay.
But
Pnina?
I just say in their own language, I'm think that is interesting to me, because what I wonder is, does he mean to say it so they'll understand? And I don't mean just like, English versus Spanish versus Hebrew versus, whatever. I mean, say it using words that will make sense to them.
Right. I mean, Alter says, it may mean that the husband, having heard the royal decree in his own language, proceeds to convey its contents to his wife in that language, which presumably is also her language, so that there should be no mistake about what has been decreed. So that's the suggestion. Okay, Pnina, quickly, because
they had all the nations were allowed to build back their temples, by the way.
right.
As long as they acknowledged that the temple that belonged to Assyria that he built, Ahasuerus, is
Persia.
that at the time they were allowed to, the one that we built when we were still, okay. He allowed people to go back to their land after he conquers them.
But does
And
this
they
have
were allowed,
anything to do with this?
I'm not done with my sentence. They
Okay.
were all allowed to build temples back. We weren't the only ones that were allowed to build back our temple. As long as the king of Assyria temple was the one that ruled the others.
Persia, not Assyria.
Persia. Okay. Whoever what is that, the story. It's the
I
same.
want to move on. Yeah. But what's the point?
And so the idea is that we weren't the only one who spoke a different language.
No, obviously. We know
Okay,
that.
so it's supposed to be understood to the guys in all the countries.
We know that.
The whole idea.
Okay, that's absolutely correct. Okay, where are we? Share screen. Book of Esther. Okay, Helen, do you want to read?
Sure.
Okay.
Chapter 2, paragraph 1.
Yeah.
After these events, when King Ahasuerus's wrath had abated, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what had been decreed upon her.
So what do you think that means? He remembered her, and what did he remember? After he got angry, what do you think he was remembering?
That she embarrassed him and disgraced him.
But what else might he also have been remembering?
That he killed her.
Well, we don't know, actually. Maybe, we hear it because we don't read it. He killed her. But he could have just confined her to the harem, demoted her, sent her away.
I thought he banished her. I thought he banished her from the land.
It doesn't say that. I thought so too.
I thought so too. But
I thought it says, Queen Vashti may never again appear before King Ahasuerus, and let the king confer her royal title upon another woman. Now you could just be confined to the harem and be demoted down to one of his wives, his concubines, but she's banished from his presence. It doesn't say that she's banished from the land. We don't know. We don't really know. But he's never going to see her again. Maybe she was sent away. She was punished. Yeah. But
I think it's interesting you bring that up, because it remembered has a specific resonance in the Torah. Now, I mean, this is in the Tanakh, but when God remembered the Israelites, he heard their cries. Now, remembering her to me suggests a positive spin on this, that as you said, we don't know what happened to her. I used to think that he banished her, then I heard he killed her, but I think he might bestow some favor on her. You can live in the kingdom, get another husband, or whatever. We don't know, but I think remember can have a positive spin.
Well, here's the thing. The next line is the king's attendants advised, let beautiful virgin girls be sought for the king. So I think he remembered, oh my God, we had good sex. She was my wife. She was beautiful. Now I don't have her anymore. Oh, yes. And also he remembers, but she humiliated me. She disobeyed me. So there's a suggestion that he remembered the good and the bad.
Yeah.
And there maybe was some regret because now he doesn't have a queen.
Right.
And so, because the very next sentence, they're advising him to get another wife. So he had to be in some way saying, oh my God, now what? You know what I mean? So I think he remembered both. You remember somebody positively, and then he remembered that, and then he remembered, oh, but I can't take her back. That would look bad, blah, blah, blah. I sent out this decree. I'm stuck. Basically, I'm stuck. Yes, Helen.
But that's probably why I think he didn't kill her or order her to be killed.
Because he had a fondness for her.
Yeah, he could see the good and the bad. He had a heart. He had a heart.
And she was also beautiful, I'm sure, very beautiful. And I don't know. Okay, keep going. Go to 3, because I read 2.
And let the king appoint officers in all of the provinces of his kingdom, and let them gather every beautiful virgin girl to Shushan, the capital, to the harem, under the charge of Haggai, chamberlain of the king, custodian of the women, and let their cosmetics be provided.
And keep going.
And let the girl who finds favor in the king's eyes become queen in Vashti's stead. The plan pleased the king, and he acted accordingly.
Okay, so realistically, I find this, excess of men, of kings, of maybe Persian culture, I don't know, will bring every single unmarried girl in the entire country, province, to the king, and he can pick who he wants. And we're going to read that the way he does it, each one has to spend a night with him.
Mm.
And then we're going to read that. And then once you're no longer a virgin, you're no longer marriageable. So then he throws them in his harem. So basically he's depleting, the suggestion is, the entire empire of marriageable girls.
As Helen said, it's good to be king.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, this is satire. I don't think any king would do this. But of course, he said, oh, that sounds like a great idea. They said, just bring every girl everywhere, not just in the city of Shushan, but all over the place. They're going around and they're calling all these young girls and taking them away. It's like, oh my God. And of course, he says, this pleases me. Great idea. So let's do that. And then it immediately switches to our Jewish story. So, okay, Pnina, why don't you read? Oh, let me just move down.
Where are we?
I'm going to tell you. There was a Jewish man.
I got it. There was a Jewish man in Shushan, the capital, whose name was Mordechai, son of Yair, son of Shmini, son of Kish, a Benjaminite. Okay, so that shows you that it was the same tribe that King David came from.
That's right.
Who had been exiled from Jerusalem with the exiles that had been exiled along the, it's supposed to be like Jehovah. So it's
Yehonia.
Yehonia, king of Judah. I don't remember this one, Yehonia. Okay. whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, see, I told you it's Babylonia, I remembered, had sent, oh, no, I said Assyria, sorry, you're right, had sent into exile.
Okay, so now so we know that this story happened after the destruction of the first temple,
Right.
because he had come out and he had been exiled. I'm sure Jeconiah is a made-up name. They didn't use real names, except they did use Nebuchadnezzar. He was the king. So, okay, king of Babylon had sent into exile. So there was this man Mordecai who was a real good lineage, could trace it all the way back. There was a guy. Go ahead.
Is there any way that they can trace Jeconiah to a certain?
I don't think it was a real king.
Well, I think there was.
There was a king, Jehoniah.
I'll have to look it up on the king list.
I didn't see in
good to
the
be
Bible. That's
You
what
have
I'm
a king list. I love that. Okay, well, she's
I have
looking
to
it up on
find
the king list.
Okay, well, tell us what era that
List.
was it. Okay.
Uh,
He raised his cousin Hadassah, who's also called Esther, for she had neither father nor mother. The girl was of beautiful form and beautiful visage, and when her father and mother died, Mordecai adopted her as his daughter.
So I think this is interesting. According to Robert Alter, who, just it's his interpretation, he thought Esther was in her late teens or mid-teens, and that Mordecai was in his 30s. I thought that was interesting because I always thought of Mordecai as much older. And he says, I think they were of the same generation because they were cousins. They weren't uncle and niece. He was her cousin. So he was the oldest of the cousins and she was the youngest or something like that. And he adopted her as his daughter, but he wasn't an old guy. Also, he points out that the word beautiful is used twice. Beautiful form and she had a beautiful body and a beautiful face. And that he said it reminded him of Joseph, who's also called very, very beautiful and also rose up to be, in royalty. And that these are these two beautiful Hebrews, and that, also, who else was called beautiful when he was a baby? Moses. They said he was very beautiful. And
wasn't Rachel beautiful too?
Rachel was beautiful. So, that's right. She was beautiful.
I thought they also said about King David.
King David, I think you're right. I think they said.
Yeah, David was beautiful.
I know for sure Absalom was considered the most beautiful man in Israel in his time. King David's son Absalom, with his incredible thick hair. We read about that and how beautiful he was. He was gorgeous. And so
there is a song that says, Ki David yefe enayim, David who had beautiful eyes.
Yeah, you're right. So beauty, Hebrews were beautiful. And I don't know, this is in every culture. We seem to imbue other qualities to people with beauty, wisdom or strength or courage or intelligence or whatever. We seem to imbue those qualities on people of beauty, because I guess it's true. Great beauty is rare. It's rare. There's actually a bracha when you see a really beautiful person, because it's such a rare thing. And I think in LA, we're used to it sort of because all the beautiful people of America come to Los Angeles to try to get in the movie business. But if you go to the rest of the world, rest of the country, you'll see most people are normal or average looking, and then you see we're good looking. But here we have a lot of beautiful young people, because they're all trying to make it. Anyway, she was beautiful, really pretty. She was shaped beautifully. Her face was beautiful. And she's our Jewish girl heroine, so she's got to be really good. Okay, one more, Pnina.
And now when the king's order and edict became known, and many girls were gathered to Shushan, the capital, under the charge of Haggai, Esther was taken to the palace under the charge of Haggai, custodian of the women.
Okay, so custodian of the women, what do we know that means? Does anybody?
They were like
If you go back to the history of the world, Mel Brooks, they were eunuchs.
They
And-
are eunuchs.
Hold on, like Greg Hines.
Yeah,
Definitely eunuchs, because
Yeah.
otherwise they couldn't couldn't have sex. Eunuchs are castrated, so there's no way to.
but they were guards. They were servants and guards.
Right, but the only around the women were only eunuchs.
Right,
But they can't. If they were guards, they were eunuch guards. Can
right.
you imagine being told you have to become a eunuch? Okay. Pamela,
They made them eunuchs.
I know.
They
We-
made them eunuchs.
Yeah.
Oy, yeah.
Okay, Pamela, 9.
All right. I'm gonna need a little more scrolling from you.
Oh, sorry.
The girl found favor.
Number 9.
Yes, the girl found favor in his eyes. We gotta switch spots. The girl found favor in his eyes and won his kindness.
Okay, we're talking about the eunuch. We're not talking about the king.
Oh,
We're talking about the eunuch. He liked her. Go ahead.
Okay. So that he hurried to provide her with her cosmetics and meals and the 7 maids that were to be given her from the palace. Wow. He also transferred her and her maids to the best quarters in the harem.
So already she stands out with beauty, with whatever. I mean, we like to imagine she was kind and sweet. I mean, again, we imbue all these qualities that they're not mentioned at all. But of course, the Jewish girl stood out among thousands of girls, the eunuch, and he gave her cosmetics and food and gave her 7 maids. Can you imagine? And put her in the best part of the harem. Okay, keep going.
7 maids a milking, like the Christmas songs. Sorry.
All
Okay,
the while,
all the while, Esther did not divulge her race or ancestry, for Mordecai had instructed her not to tell, which I think is so interesting.
okay, let's talk about that.
Well, I just wonder why he would think that that might disqualify her.
Do you think that was it? Why are you? Why can't? Why isn't your camera on? Just asking. I like you. I like to see you.
Because I'm still getting ready for my day.
Oh, well, we don't
So
care.
I was like half getting ready, half paying attention. Sorry.
Oh, okay, all right.
Anyway, and I have a cattail now. Well, I don't really understand why that would be, and maybe just to make her more mysterious as well. But
Okay. Any other thoughts about why? Okay, Merle, what do you think? She's looking for her thing. Oh, you can't find your Karen, are you
There's
raising
noise
your-
in the background that I can't get rid of.
Okay, go ahead.
I have never understood everything behind this whole story. Does that sound strange? I mean,
No.
just,
That's why it's fun to study it.
I
'cause we
mean, I'm
never really
happy to
looked into it.
study. I'm happy to hear. I've just never understood it. It's never made, there's so many issues that in ancient times, ancient history, that I've just never gotten the whole message from it.
Okay,
So
so
I love listening to it so that maybe sometime in my life I'll understand it.
okay. Karen, are you raising your hand?
Yes.
Why don't you show yourself so we can get to know you?
Okay. I think it would just be anti-Semitism. I don't think anything else makes sense, because if it doesn't matter if you're a Jew, like, why not say it? Like right now with the rise of anti-Semitism, I would feel uncomfortable wearing a Star of David or putting an Israeli flag on my phone. You know, I would feel very uncomfortable. And one comment back to beauty, the rabbis actually said Esther was skinny but beautiful. So I thought that was funny, because to them, skinny
That's
was
a
a bad thing, whereas now, you know, it's like
Oh,
the ultimate beauty.
Oh, that's funny. You're right. I didn't know that. That's a commentary. She was skinny but beautiful. Where right, because if you look at like 19th century paintings, the women, and
Right.
even Greek statues of women, they're quite, Zoptic, or they're very full bodied, but they're saying she was skinny. But that's our idea of beauty. Yes. Thank you. That's great. Okay, Susan.
I agree. I mean, I think we have to recognize anti-Semitism, even though the Persians were pretty liberal with it. I mean, they had multi-gods and Zoroastrian. So, I mean, there still was a prejudice. And then, forgot what I was going to say. The response, well, one is to the full-bodiedness. The Greeks had beautiful women that were proportional. It was the plump ones in Rubens and in Rembrandt in the 17th century, because the estrogen, because the fat contains estrogen, and that was a sign of fertility. And in terms of getting the story, I guess that's what I was going to go back. Merle's situation. I've always loved the story, and part of it is that my Hebrew name is Esther. So, that was an empowerment. And there's a wonderful book out by Meir Solovitch, which I would recommend. He has 10 Jewish heroes, and Esther is one of them. And the title of it is called Power and Providence. And he speaks about these 10 people, 3 of whom are women, and of course, Esther is one, but who took power, but also believed in providence. And I think this is a wonderful story of Jews, and here a woman changing the dire fate of her people by having the courage to speak up. So I think it's a grand story, even though it has comedic elements in it, which makes it even more relatable in a way,
Absolutely. And whether it actually happened or not, it still has messages and lessons and things to say. And even the idea that God is not mentioned or present in this story seems to imply you can be on your own and still survive, still find a way, still unite, still, prevail. Belief in God doesn't have to have God interfering or intervening in order to save people. We can do that ourselves. Okay, Penina.
I think that I'm going back to the beginning. They are mentioning the tribes that they come from because of a reason. King David was from the same tribe. If they knew that she is a princess, a member of the family, a cousin to King David, or whatever, second cousin, third cousin, but a member of that particular chain, right?
Right.
It gives him, the king, once he married her, and she may even bear a child later or whatever, it makes him the owner of the country. He becomes the king of that country that she is a princess of.
Right.
It's the same thing like...
That's interesting.
Absolutely. And
but he was the king of that country.
What?
He was king already of Judea.
It's no, because he gave them all back to, there is the right to go back and build their own temples. Israel was not the only one that he sent back.
No.
He wanted to have their countries, but he wanted to be the what you call it, the rightful owner. But according to the Jewish tradition of faith, the king was supposed to be from the same, if it's somebody who inherits it by a family chain, by a family route, it makes her the next queen. So if they ever would say have like a revolution against them or something, she won't be one of the revolting ones. She becomes already one of his. It's true bloodline.
Okay, so
ownership by marriage and by being his wife.
So what
it's like she surrenders the country to his ruling. That's it.
So what Penina is saying is, because Esther comes from the same tribe as King David, there's a kinship there. There's a blood kinship, because everybody from each tribe all descended from the original patriarch of that name. So that she carries possibly royalty in order, and has the ability perhaps to
and the faith
have her descendants be on the throne of Judea. Is
Yeah,
what she
and the faith is in jeopardy here. The faith of Judaism is in jeopardy. If he becomes already the king of Judea, forget it. The line changes. It's not anymore Abraham's
Okay,
faith,
so I
and the
think that
gods will change. The
okay,
gods
but
will change.
however, Panina, I think that's a really interesting idea. However, at the end of the day, even after she reveals she's Jewish, they remain married. And so what you're talking about could still happen.
Yeah, but the king acknowledged it and gave them the permission to defend themselves.
Okay.
Again, he gave them permission
It's
to
true.
defend themselves. So
Okay.
that's still under his ruling.
Okay,
Okay.
let's continue.
Okay.
Oh, wait, Bonnie, did you have your hand up? Did you want to say something?
I wanted to ask Susan, what was the name of that book, or who wrote it?
Oh, the name.
Good, I'm glad you asked.
Okay.
It's called Providence and Power, or Power and Providence. Want to do, and it's by Meir Soloveichik, Meir Sol. Help me, Susan.
Soloveichik.
Thank you.
Soloveichik.
Yeah,
Okay, so
it's great. It's great.
okay, so all right, Merle, do you want to read? Here we go. Since you don't understand it, maybe reading it will help you. Okay, so here now we're in 11.
And every day Mordecai would stroll in front of the harem courtyard to find out how Esther was faring and would be done with her.
You know,
And now
what would be done? Just a second. You know, it's interesting. This harem must have been like its own courtyard of buildings because he had so many women living in there. She had her own, it was like its own separate structure.
sounds like a dorm building.
Yeah.
It was much more beautiful than that. I mean, all the women,
yeah.
but it was, I feel it was like a series of I mean, anyway, Persian architecture is so beautiful. I'm sure they were beautiful, beautiful buildings. Continue.
And I'm sure there were lots of gardens around there as well.
Oh yeah, gardens, absolutely. Go ahead. Now 12.
And now when each girl's turn came to go to King Ahasuerus, after undergoing the prescribed 12-month care for women.
Okay, so
then,
every woman had to be beautifying herself for an entire year. That's kind of, I think, satirical, that they had to, how much beauty can you do for a year? I guess.
I was going to say, what do they do that takes them a year to get beautiful?
Well, this is
to continue to remain beautiful.
Oh, keep going.
For only then would their period of beauty care be completed. 6 months with oil of myrrh,
myrrh
with perfumes and women's cosmetics. How much perfume can you use?
I what they
that's so me with my asthma.
Taking baths in milk, and I don't know what they were doing, but they were beautifying themselves for an entire year. To me, this is satirical. This is like, I'm sure. Well, I think Persian women were very beautiful, and they do. If you look at paintings or whatever, they wear a lot of makeup. They wear kohl, their hair is bridges, very elaborate hairstyles and everything. So I think this is making fun at women's beauty treatments. You know, if you were talking about LA for 6, you know, they did laser, they did Botox, they did facelifts, they did eye lifts. It took them a whole year. You know what I mean? Tushy talks, you know. You could
it could be spa. It could be a spa with massages and baths. I mean, what's not to like?
Maybe this was the start of a spa.
Yes, it feels like it was a spa. Okay, keep going a little more.
With this, the girl would appear before the king. She would be provided with whatever she requested to accompany her from the harem to the palace.
Okay, now here's the killer. Go ahead.
In the evening, she would go to the king, and in the morning, she would return to the second harem. Under the charge of Shashgaz, the king's chamberlain, custodian of the concubines. She would not go to the king again unless the king desired her, whereupon she would be summoned by name.
So she would go to the king. Oh my God. She would go to the king as a virgin in the one virgin section, house of those. And then he would sleep with her. And then she would be sent to the concubines because she was now like his property, his prostitute, never to leave her, see her family, never to have children, never to get married. His voracious sexual appetite. Okay. So, Bonnie, can you read? How are your eyes? Bonnie, not reading. Okay. Helen, why don't you read about Esther?
14.
Wait, Bonnie, are you going to read? No. Okay, 15.
And when the time came for Esther, the daughter of Avichail, uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her as a daughter, to go to the king, she did not ask for a thing other than that which Haggai, which is a funny name, Haggai.
Yeah, really.
The king's chamberlain, custodian of the women, had advised, and Esther found favor in the eyes of all who saw her.
Keep going.
Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus to his palace in the 10th month, which is the month of Tevet, in the 7th year of his reign. And the king loved Esther more than all the women, and she won his favor and kindness more than all the virgins. He placed the royal crown on her head and made her queen in Vashti's stead.
Okay. Why? Why do you think, what do you think it was about Esther that made him choose her?
Other than her beauty?
Yeah, they were all beautiful. We don't hear anything.
And the good
Was
sex?
she smart?
What did you say, Susan?
I said, was
Well,
she
it's not nice
smarter
to
than
say,
the
but
others?
good sex.
Good sex.
And I have a question.
Yeah.
Was there a different chamber person for each woman?
No, they were like 7 or 10 eunuchs
okay.
to kind of, and then there were
I'm
other
just thinking
women.
she was smarter than the other women.
Right. I would say kind. They mentioned her kindness.
No, it's his kindness. She
What?
won his kindness.
Yes, but she was kind. But you
We
said
don't
what was
think-
it about
doesn't
her?
say that anywhere.
What?
No, it doesn't say that anywhere.
Yes, it does in the first eunuch.
No. Oh,
It doesn't have to say it, it implies.
it's
Yeah,
implied.
it was the first eunuch there, and the other two, interestingly, weren't eunuchs. They were king's chamberlains. They didn't.
Well, no, they said she found favor in their eyes and they liked her, but they don't say she was kind. They never say she's kind. We say she's kind. I mean,
Okay, then why would they like her? If she was a nasty, SOB, that usually repels people. So they have to be something genteel, kind, caring.
there has to be, but it's not mentioned. All they say is she's beautiful, form and figure, and that she found favor in their eyes and they liked her. But we don't know why. So
Well, I'm wondering if it's the clue isn't in what they said about she brought only those things with her that whatever
that
the
they
guy
did. Yeah, she didn't want anything extra.
And so that to me seems to imply that her simplicity and maybe a sense of sincerity and honesty and authenticity.
And modesty, maybe modesty.
Something along these lines, because, we have to read these things as no words are unimportant in a sense, right? And so the fact that they mentioned everybody else came in with all of the doodads and she only went in with whatever he said. So either she had an inside track on what to do, maybe that's just what it was, or she was more modest or more simple, right? Like they're always, the king is looking for a humble, docile bride because he already had the strong one who was defiant and she got, booted from her position. So usually you're going to look for the opposite of what you've just gotten rid of. Anyway, that's my thought, is that the clue is that.
Okay, Penina?
She was gutsy. She came to him without him calling her.
Later. Oh, so that tells you she was gutsy now.
She's gutsy when she showed up to him to ask for people's life.
But later.
He never called her. He
Yeah, but
never
that's
called her.
later. What about now when she's taken into his bedroom?
I don't remember that part.
We just read
First
it.
time.
She went into his bedroom and the next morning she was queen.
Okay,
we
I
just
still
read
say
that.
that she's gutsy. And you
Okay,
know
so
something? Sometimes you could tell in people's eyes what the face itself, like you don't think that gorgeous, but sometimes just the person, when you look at them, even the eyes itself, the demeanor. I think she was, yes, she came to him and everything, but to show up later without being called, she was gutsy.
okay,
She
so
took-
you're saying that the gutsiness from that we learned that she could have
you
been
could tell
gutsy
through
here.
the person's eyes who they are, the demeanor. He liked her.
Okay,
I think her all mannerism. We don't know what she did in the bedroom when
don't know.
he was there, how she talked to him, if she talked to him, what was going on. You know, my father always used to say, jamais le nez ne gâte joli visage. The nose never makes a face ugly. It means that you look at the person, sometimes just you look at their eyes and you can like them already and you think they're beautiful.
Okay.
So, and then it shows me when she shows up without him calling her that she was gutsy.
I know, but also
She had that in her mannerism.
okay, I that's possible.
In a
Now,
good way.
Robert,
She didn't do something that he didn't want. She did what he wanted, but her whole mannerism was different.
okay, so Robert Alter suggests, I've never read this before. I thought it was very interesting. He suggests that there's something weak about this king because he's kind of pushed around by his advisors. Haman, convinces him to kill
And the
Jews.
woman who didn't want to come to him.
Right. Didn't want to come to him. So I don't know where Robert Alter gets this, but I like it. He suggests that Ahasuerus had problems in the bedroom, that he might not have been a very virile man, and that Esther helped him in some way to feel more virile, to have sex, to the other women didn't know what to do. And that I'll read you what he says because I thought this is really interesting. Okay.
Well,
And the king loved Esther more than all the women. The reason for his love is not spelled out. Perhaps it was just her winning ways, as indicated at the end of verse 15. But if sexual performance is the crucial test, how would one unexperienced virgin distinguish herself from the others? We are left wondering about this, but the arch double meaning of one detail at the beginning of chapter 5 raises the suspicion that this passive and not very competent king may have had a problem with virility. If that is the case, the beautiful and understanding Esther might possibly be the one virgin who helps him overcome his difficulties.
So that's what I said, good sex. I think that is certainly implied. There was in a sleeping.
Well, and maybe that's the reference.
Pamela, just a minute, please.
Sorry.
Okay. That is sleeping with this woman who satisfied him. It seems like a direct correlation there. They didn't say he had a dinner or a date or go to the movie concert, but it was all the evening before.
Cookies
In the kitchen? Oh, in your room. Good.
in the kitchen.
Helen, mute. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Susan, go ahead.
Well, okay, that's it.
Okay.
Maybe
Pam.
she looked like a boy.
That's funny. I think that's true. First of all, you have to remember all of these girls were virgins, so none of them knew what the heck they were going to do.
But what Susan just said, I think goes directly to that passage that I was referring to, which is she took with her what she'd been tipped off with to take. So maybe she was told sort of, here's the inside track on how to please him.
I thought that too. She found favor with the eunuchs. The eunuchs know everything. Maybe they gave her but I love how we're filling in the blanks. Maybe they gave her tips. The king is like this. You have to be patient.
We'll never know.
Never know, but that's what's so fun. And it's like, we don't know. All we know is she went in at night and came out the queen, and what did she do? And I love Robert Alter's suggestion because he said, how would any girl distinguish herself? And then the idea of kindness, understanding, patience, sweetness. I don't know, but I mean, this Jewish woman, young woman, stands out among all these thousands of girls. And I guess the rest of them must have been happy because they were probably sent home to have a
He
life.
went to the concubine place afterwards, didn't they? Isn't that
But
what
the ones he hadn't tested yet would
they
get to
hadn't
go.
tested? Yes.
Yeah, the ones that he hadn't de-virginized, he could
Right.
send home, and Esther became queen. So we have like 2 minutes. This is a perfect conclusion of this section, where it said he put Vashti's crown on her head, and then the king made a grand feast for all his ministers and servants, the feast of Esther. He lowered taxes for the provinces and gave presents befitting the king. And when the virgins were gathered a second time, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. And Esther would still not divulge her ancestry or race as Mordecai had instructed her. Indeed, Esther followed Mordecai's instructions just as she'd done while under his care, meaning when he was raising her. So basically, so far, except for whatever happened that night, Esther is kind of a passive, sweet girl. She's not going to step up to the task. I mean, and which makes her her courage even all the more remarkable. It's not like, I mean, Penina thinks she's gutsy. I wonder if she grew to be gutsy in the face of, oh my God, this is a disaster, you have to do something, or that was she inherently gutsy? It doesn't seem so yet, because she listened to her Mordecai, she did whatever he said. She was raised to be a demure, sweet.
Remember,
loving.
she's from David's tribe.
She's
That
from David's
David was
tribe.
gutsy.
That's true. We don't know. Or she's keeping it, under wraps, her gutsiness, because gutsy women were not admired. You know what I mean? We know, like, women are always criticized. Like, for a man, he's bold and brave. For a woman, she's overly ambitious, she's too pushy. I mean, qualities in a man, the same qualities in a woman, are not admired even today. It's terrible to say. So maybe she was that type, but keeping it quiet.
Except for Deborah.
Right, Deborah. But she was, yes, but she was her own woman, from the very beginning. Yes. She was a prophetess, or Miriam, but I'm saying in the Persian world, in this Byzantine, ancient Near East world, she was playing the role. And maybe, who knows, maybe people already knew that the Jews knew a Persian Jewish girl, she's going to be gutsy. She's going to have opinions, but she's not showing anything yet. We don't know. So there's a perfect time to stop. And it's so interesting, because I mean, even me reading it, I'm learning, we see it so much deeper. And Merle, hopefully you'll finally enjoy or figure it out as we get there. Anyway, have a beautiful week, and Shabbat Shalom. Oh, let me tell you something. So tomorrow night is Canasta. I don't know if any of you are coming to that, but next week on April 3rd, it's next Wednesday night, there's a film at the Resnick campus called No Accident. It's an HBO film about these two Jewish lawyers who sued 25 of the white supremacists who marched in Charlottesville, Virginia, and actually caused damage. And we're showing this film, the documentary, and they're going to be at the temple, both lawyers. So you should come and, hear them. And then on April 6th in the afternoon, and Susan Ehrlich, I know you haven't come out of the house much because I haven't seen you at things. I haven't seen you at temple very often, but the former president of Israel is coming, Reuven Rivlin, to our temple, only us in the whole city.
Fantastic.
And so I hope you'll come and hear him. That's on any of you who can, which is going to be at like 3:30 in the afternoon, Saturday afternoon, just for like an hour and a half. It's going to be amazing. That's when he can.
Write that down.
Yeah. So I hope you'll
Which
Yes.
campus? Which campus?
Resnick
I
campus.
wish I could come to everything.
I know. It's
You and me both.
that's going to be now in the bulletin today. All of this stuff is going to be in the bulletin. Plus, on April 15th, 14th, the Los Angeles Jewish Symphony is doing a magnificent concert at Resnick. It's the 30th anniversary of their founding, and their first concert was at University Synagogue 30 years ago. So they want to come back to the building and do this concert that's going to be with singers and music and a full orchestra.
I
And
read about that. That looks amazing.
and they have given us 100 tickets at $36. So
Wow.
everybody, anyone who wants to go, get your tickets. So, okay, just a few things that I'm doing at the temple.
I'll see
Wow.
you all in May in person.
Okay, bye
I
everyone.
start watching Moses, that movie Moses, not the old one. And
Oh,
it's pretty interesting because they have people kind of like chiming in the middle.
what is
that
it, a documentary?
No, well, yes and no, because they have also interpreters that are giving their
This is on what,
interpretation.
television?
It was on Netflix.
Oh, I'm gonna look. Thank
Yes,
you.
it's called Moses, and it's it's like a new thing. It's not like the Ten Commandments and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah. And in the middle of the movie, there is people who are chiming in and explaining and giving their
Yeah,
opinions.
scholars. Yeah.
Yes. You have their historians and archaeologists, and they stop and they kind of like contribute a little bit to what the scene is all about and everything.
Oh, I'm gonna look at
Very
that.
interesting.
All right.
Very interesting. Yes.
Everybody, bye.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.